It's August 4th, 2020, and this is Sketchworks NewsBrake. The news stops here. I'm Brian Troxel. 2 NASA astronauts are back on Earth today. Their spacecraft splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico after a 2-month mission in outer space. They now want to go back to space because they've been filled in on everything that's happened since they left. Joe Biden will wait another week to announce who, from his binders full of African American women, will be his running mate. He delayed his announcement after people discovered one of his potential candidates, California Congresswoman Karen Bass, praised the controversial Church of Scientology. It may cost Bass the chance of being vice president, but it could get her a role in a Battlefield Earth sequel. Microsoft is planning to buy TikTok, even though President Donald Trump wants to ban it. TikTok is a source of security concerns for the U.S. and several other nations because a Chinese company owns it, which means the Chinese government can collect sensitive data from millions of its U.S. users. Data which Trump believes rightfully belongs to Russia. Now, Microsoft ownership could eliminate those security concerns and replace your favorite TikTok videos with a blue screen of death. Thousands of people gathered in Berlin Saturday for an end of the pandemic protest. And since the vast majority completely ignored coronavirus safety precautions, it will most likely be the end for a lot of them. Although, maybe not, since it's been established that the coronavirus won't infect you if you're protesting. That is, depending on what you're protesting. But it will infect you if you gather in groups of more than 10 to, say, attend a funeral. That is, depending on whose funeral it is. Look, it's all very confusing, but maybe all of this will make the coronavirus go, does not compute, and then self-destruct like a robot in an old Star Trek episode. Fingers crossed. 31 of America's 100 largest cities have enacted policies restricting police officers from using chokeholds on their victims. I mean, citizens. In the other 69 of America's 100 largest cities, officers can still use chokeholds, but they have to stop when they hear the safe word. This coronavirus has sickened more than 4 million people in the United States so far, and yet some people refuse to wear the face masks that will slow down the pandemic. It's time for Sketchworks NewsBrake correspondent Tim Millard to separate the facts from the fiction.
You are not immune or protected from this virus, and that's why we keep saying no matter where you live in America, you need to wear a mask and socially distance.
Let's see if people are getting the message. Ooh, that doesn't look good. Let's face it, some people refuse to wear a mask because they're stupid. They believe in the random conspiracies your Uncle Jim keeps posting on Facebook. Oh, and some of them are also members of Congress. Great.
Texas Republican Louis Gohmert is in quarantine, the 10th member of Congress with a confirmed case of coronavirus.
Gohmert, frequently seen without a mask, even for part of yesterday, today blamed mask wearing without any evidence.
I can't help but wonder if by keeping a mask on and keeping it in place, that if I might have put some germs, some of the virus onto the mask and breathed it in.
Really? Here at Sketchworks, we believe in science. We also believe in producing content without spending a lot of money. So I'm going to use generic stock footage I found online to illustrate how you do not get COVID-19. You cannot get it by crossing your arms in a confident manner. You cannot get it by looking up at tall buildings. You cannot get it by being diverse college students, scoffing at clever girl in glasses, sitting on lawn in loneliness with notebook. Wow, that's the actual stock video description. Here's how you can get COVID-19. And yes, we're still using stock footage because it's in the budget. We can afford it. The CDC says COVID-19 is spread from person to person through inhaled respiratory droplets. These droplets are produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. What have we learned? Number 1, wear a mask, because the life you save may be your own. Number 2, this pandemic will get worse unless we start listening to proven scientific facts. And number 3, we need a bigger video budget. Isn't that right, random stock footage actor? For Sketchworks NewsBrake, I'm Tim Millard.
Thank you, Tim Millard. I'm also stock footage. Kodak, a company that once made cameras and film, will now make life-saving drugs. The Trump administration gave Kodak a nearly $800 million loan to change its image as a company that failed to keep up with the times. Administration officials are also planning to give Blockbuster a loan to make military jets. Since we're talking about massive failures, you have a chance to buy a piece of one. U.S. Marshals are auctioning merchandise from the Fire Festival as a way to repay victims who lost money from what was supposed to be a star-studded concert in the Bahamas. But sorry folks, the cheese sandwich is not included in the auction. However, we are offering the Sketchworks cheese sandwich for sale in our online store. It doesn't actually come with cheese, but the mold is in the shape of our old logo. Not a lot of voters know the wife of Georgia candidate for U.S. Senate Jon Ossoff is a frontline healthcare worker who has contracted COVID-19. That is, until Ossoff released a campaign commercial saying his wife is a frontline healthcare worker who has contracted COVID-19. Now, Ossoff is not saying Georgia voters should elect him because his wife has contracted COVID-19. He lets his campaign staff do that. Staying in Georgia, because we love humidity, a teacher in Georgia has stepped up the game in online learning. She's purchased a dry erase board, a special camera to display worksheets, and has turned her dining room into a broadcast studio for school lessons. As standard protocol for public school teachers, she had to pay for everything out of her own pocket and will be reassigned in the spring when her students' standardized test scores aren't up to snuff. Meanwhile, across the state in the also humid small town of Jefferson, Georgia, school started back in person with hardly anybody wearing a mask. We'll update this story in 2 weeks when the schools shut down because everyone is sick.
Hey Brian, I couldn't come up with a good way for you to toss to me, so I'm just going to kind of interject here. The AJC article that broke the story about schools in Jefferson going back in person used the word bucolic, which I, a college graduate, had to Google the definition of. I doubt anybody in Jefferson is familiar with that word, save maybe a 17-year-old overachiever getting ready for the SAT. The article then describes Jefferson as picturesque, which I guess depends on what picture you're looking at. The charming downtown district? Sure. The Section 8 housing on the other side of the tracks? Not so much. Later in this article, a man whose granddaughter goes to Jefferson Elementary School argues that kids shouldn't have to wear masks to school because the science has already proven that children are not spreaders. I have to trust the science. Is this a thing? Do people really believe that kids can't spread it? Because I tell you what, Brian, I used to work with kids, and kids are nasty.
I totally agree, Allie. Kids are nasty. And following up on that story, a recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the JAMA, found that young children not only transmit the COVID and SARS viruses more efficiently than adults, but may also be the prime cause of the pandemic's worldwide spread. Just as Isaac and Malachi commanded. My goodness, kids are just the worst, right? But then again, I thought that before the pandemic ever started, so. Someone in South Korea actually put about $20,000 into a washing machine to remove any traces of the coronavirus. The Associated Press, who broke this story, has already made the obvious joke about money laundering, so we here at Sketchworks NewsBrake just want to remind everyone that if you're worried that your money has coronavirus, send it to us and we will clean it for you. A murder hornet was captured in Birch Bay, Washington, while zombie cicadas have invaded West Virginia. And while most people choose to ignore the significance of these events, there can be no mistake that we are at war with the insect. Which is also the plot line for Liam Neeson's latest movie in the Taken series, Taken 4: Buzzkill. Two paramedics in Ontario, Canada, were returning from a call at 3:30 a.m. last Friday when they noticed a skunk wandering down the road with its head stuck in a Tim Hortons cup. The pair of paramedics stopped and removed the cup, whereby they were promptly sprayed and bit, and both since have contracted rabies. The two are now suing Tim Hortons for $50 million. The Ellen DeGeneres Show is under fire. Numerous accounts from current and past employees, as well as from show guests like comedian Brad Garrett and actress Leah Thompson, allude to a toxic work environment, rampant with discrimination and intimidation. In the spirit of full disclosure, I can tell you similar claims have been made about me and the workplace culture here at NewsBrake, which forces me to make the difficult decision of terminating the employment of my cats. They are very bullying and intimidating, especially when I open the fridge. Dwayne "The Rock, can you smell what The Rock is cooking?" Johnson has cooked something which indeed does smell. Hours before the XFL was scheduled for public auction, The Rock, along with investment group Redbird Capital and his ex-wife, purchased the XFL for $15 million. Former owner Vince McMahon spent as much as $200 million on the league, which means after the XFL folds again, Sketchworks will be able to purchase it with our coronavirus-laden South Korean laundry money. Champagne is the latest thing to fall by the wayside in the COVID-19 pandemic. Wine producers in France report they've lost as much as $2 billion in sales. Seems people aren't as willing to pop a bottle of champagne when the entire world is going to hell. But it means more for me because my swimming pool needs a refill. And that reminds me, I need to go take a bucolic champagne swim to beat this oppressive Georgia humidity. So that's all for Sketchworks NewsBrake. We'll be back next week, and we hope you are too. I'm Brian Troxel. Say hi to your mom for me.
One, 2, take 2.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence.